What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Gators Online Show, and it's a big one because it is Final Four weekend out in San Antonio, Texas. I am Keith Bieber of Gators Online. That is Zach Alberverdi of Gators Online. I'm in Florida. Zach's out in San Antonio to cover this incredibly huge and significant Final Four for the Florida Gators. It's their sixth time making it to the Final Four. Florida has two national titles, but this is a unique one because the Gators are going to face an SEC foe, Auburn, in one national semifinal on Saturday. Zach is there to cover it all. We're going to preview the game. We're going to talk about the one meeting that the teams had earlier this season, and we'll probably give some predictions at the end of the show. We'll see. But first, Zach's got to do a quick ad read. We got to pay some bills. Zach, take it over, buddy.
Absolutely. And as we do at the start of each and every week, want to give a shout out to Big Game Football Factory. They have produced the new balls for the Gators this spring that you guys have been seeing them go through camp with, and you can get your hands on one of these balls. Head over to biggameusa.com. Use the code GatorsOnline to get 10% off your entire order and free shipping for a limited time. The Gators designed the ball with Big Game USA to ensure they're comfortable with it, and it's truly one of a kind. Start your collection of Florida's official game balls today. Perfect to order for tailgates, autographs from your favorite Gators, or gifts. The code works on any football, and this just isn't a football. It's a piece of Florida history, perfect for true Florida fans to display or give as a gift. Be among the first to own it. Snap yours today at biggameusa.com/Gators. And obviously, you guys see spring football is going on. They just had their first scrimmage, but we are all in right now on this basketball team. A huge weekend, Final Four for the first time since 2014. Just the second time that the Gators have played an SEC team in NCAA tournament history. So a little bit of uniqueness there, and obviously no shortage of storylines in this matchup, Keith.
Yeah, and you and I both grew up around Gator athletics. I'm a little bit older than Zach, I hate to say. And, there was a time when people dreamed of Florida making it to one Final Four, to making it to the NCAA tournament, let alone one Final Four. And now you're talking about a program that is going to be making its sixth overall Final Four appearance, but fifth this century. Florida has become an elite program, period. May not be historical blue blood, but it is an elite program. The Gators chasing national championship number 3. And the storylines for this game, Zach, are tremendous. Obviously, you've got two SEC foes battling it out in one national semifinal with Houston and Duke facing each other in the other one. And you've got Bruce Pearl at Auburn and Todd Golden at Florida, who once worked for Bruce Pearl at Auburn. So you've got that storyline. You've got Janai Broome, Auburn's sensational post player, the SEC Player of the Year. Didn't play great in that first meeting against Florida, but Florida was without standout guard Elijah Martin, who you wrote about on Friday. So there's a lot of yin, a lot of yang. It's just a fascinating matchup. Zach, what you've been with this team all the way through this tournament run so far. Florida really hasn't played its best basketball yet, from what I can tell. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing, Zach?
I think it's a great thing because they found a way to continue to advance and keep dancing despite having halves where they did not play their best basketball and having to rally against UConn and Texas Tech. Now, it also shows a sign of a great team that they've been able to do that time and time again. They did it throughout SEC play, rallying against LSU, rallying against Georgia, obviously the big comeback win at South Carolina. So it is a sign of a great team, and I still personally feel like Florida has its best game still out there. A Tennessee-type performance like they had in the O-Dome. Certainly would be great to showcase that at some point this weekend. I don't know if it would be against Auburn. They'll probably need it for the championship game if they can advance. But I agree. I mean, they have not put together a full 40 minutes of basketball since the tournament started, which is interesting because I thought that they did that in Nashville in the SEC tournament. I mean, that game that they had against Alabama was very impressive, and they haven't had a performance quite like that yet.
Zach, you've been around this team a lot, like I said, just the last few weeks. Give us a sense of the mood of the guys on this roster. What is the mood of these young guys along with their coaches right now in San Antonio? Are they loose? Do they seem tight to you? I mean, you tell us.
You said it right there. I think they're loose. I think they're having fun. A lot of jokesters on this team. They like to have fun with each other, and they're just enjoying this experience. I think that the veteran leadership that they have from these guys has kind of helped setting that. Some of them have never got to experience this before, and then you got guys like Elijah Martin who know what it's like to be on this stage, and is making sure that these guys take it all in, but also don't forget where they came from. Like don't let all the hoopla of this weekend and all the distractions that are potentially out there, take them away from the fact that they are here kind of as underdogs. This is a big thing that they've been able to reach to make it all the way to the Final Four, but they're not done yet. I mean, they certainly are going into this game with some confidence and feeling good about the fact that they beat Auburn in the jungle, and now they're coming back in this matchup with a little bit more firepower in not only their backcourt but their front court as well. So I think they're feeling good about where they're at heading into this matchup.
Before we look ahead, and we're also going to look back as we look ahead, and I'll get into that in a second, but let's just kind of relive that comeback against Texas Tech. I mean, you and I were texting during the game, and I was over in Scotland on my vacation. It was late over there, and you were covering the game in San Francisco, and I think I told you about 5 times, hey, they're dead, dude. They are dead. It's over. They're done. It wasn't that bad, but I mean, I was concerned. Let's put it that way. Just from being at courtside, Zach, and seeing that all unwind, is it still surreal to you? Or, I mean, it just all happened so fast. How did they pull it off? How did they really do it in your mind?
I think one of the craziest things about that game was Florida went 35 minutes almost without their trio of senior guards hitting a three-pointer. Not Walter Clayton Jr., not Elijah Martin, not Will Richard. None of them were able to connect from three until the last 5 minutes of the game. And then obviously Walter Clayton Jr. and Thomas Houtt went off. But it was getting a little dicey there toward the end. I never personally felt like Florida was out of it, just given what I had seen from them in other games this year, like we mentioned. But it was going to take them starting to make some shots and connect from three. They did that. What's interesting about how that played out, I know that Walter Clayton won most outstanding player, but I know that myself and some other reporters, Keith, actually voted for Tommy Howe for MVP because we had to submit our vote before there were 2 minutes left in the game. And right before that 2 minute mark was when Howe had hit his second three-pointer back-to-back. And at that moment, man, he was kind of the star of the game. And then Walter Clayton absolutely went off the last 2 minutes. And I think cemented himself as the best player in school history at taking over a game. I wrote a story about it at Gators Online. I kind of got your opinion about it. We had a good discussion on the Swamp Talk message board as well of people giving some other players that they thought had an argument for that. But for Walter to do what he did in that game, coming off of what he did against UConn, and especially last year in that performance against Colorado, he has stepped up time and time again, and especially on this stage in March Madness. And it really was incredible for them to pull off that feat. And look, they also got some help from the Red Raiders now. Texas Tech did everything that they could do at the end of that game to allow Florida to come back and take the lead at the end. So you have to find ways to win games like that if you're going to make a run in March. And I think Florida's done it twice now with the win over UConn as well.
Well, if you look back at the history of Florida's Final Four teams, the very first one in 1994 had to stave off James Madison, I believe, in round one. The 2000 team, which was Billy Donovan's first Final Four team, needed a miracle to beat Butler in the first round. Mike Miller falling down shot. And before that, Butler had to miss a couple free throws. Billy Donovan's second Final Four team and first national championship team against actually had a game somewhere in the tournament where they barely beat Georgetown.
Yeah, Georgetown.
Corey Brewer had a big couple of minutes, and that was the difference. It was like a 57-53 game. So nobody cares. You even look at football. Every national championship team had a game that maybe it kind of pulled out that if you don't win, you don't win the national title. So nothing to be ashamed of. You're just trying to get there. Interesting thing, your great story about Walter Clayton and his place in Florida history. And I told you the one guy I kept coming up with that reminded me of him in that one magical season of 1994 was Dan Cross, who hit big shot after big shot after big shot. But in the Elite Eight, it was Craig Brown that hit the big shots that lifted Florida past Boston College to the Final Four. And then in the national semifinal game, Dan Cross did not have one of his better games. And with Florida still in the game, he was called for a charging foul in the final 11 seconds. So Florida ended up losing to Duke. But Dan Cross, phenomenal player. But Walter Clayton has kind of taken it a step or two further. Now, Zach, on Friday afternoon, I posted a story with expert predictions from across the country. Some big-name guys and some guys that are no names like me. Florida seems to be the team that two-thirds of the people were picking to win. And one of the reasons for that is because they look back to what Florida did to Auburn in February in Auburn when Auburn was number one. And Florida's bigs, Alex Condon, Tommy Howe, Chinyalu, they really kind of took over not only on the offensive end, but the defensive end and frustrated All-American post player Janai Broome of Auburn. But the Florida bigs, now Tommy Howe's coming off that great game, but overall, the Florida bigs have really run hot and cold in this tournament, Zach. But this is the kind of game. You look at the matchups. If these guys play well, Auburn's going to have a lot to contend with. So what's the feeling at Florida right now? Do they think these guys are ready for the moment? What's the vibe with the bigs? Because they got to step it up. The guards have stepped it up. Now the bigs need to.
Yeah, and I think that number one for them in this matchup is probably winning the rebounding battle. I think that they think that that's key, obviously, at any time and at any moment in an NCAA tournament run, but especially in this matchup against Auburn and their front court. Florida feels good about where their bigs are at, how they can match up, especially with having Micah Handlogden available in this matchup. Remember, he did not play in that first game as well against Auburn. So I think winning the boards is going to be key for Florida. Another thing, especially if it's a close game, that this could come down to is being able to hit your free throws. And Florida was able to do that really well in the first game at Auburn. They shot 83% at the line, which was their highest free throw percentage in SEC play at the time. And Auburn made just 60% of their free throws. So Florida's coming off of that game against Texas Tech where they were really clutch at the line late. The Red Raiders missed some free throws that allow Florida to come back. And every guy that stepped up to the line late for Florida knocked down the foul shots, which at times has been an issue for Florida in some games. So talking to some guys in the locker room today, they feel like those are the two keys for them, is that they need to win the rebounding battle and they need to hit their free throws. In every single game, Florida wants to keep its turnovers down, which is something that's been also problematic.
Yeah, Zach, I was at that first meeting in Auburn, what's now Neville Arena, used to be Auburn Arena, and Florida played great, won by 9, actually led by double digits most of the second half.
Led by 21 at one point.
Auburn rallied, hit a bunch of threes, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that game because, Auburn is a dangerous team. Just like Florida, they can fall behind and they can rally. They can get points back in bunches. Same for Florida, just as we saw the other night. A couple key stats that really jumped out at me from that first game. Florida made 13 three-pointers. Auburn made 7. That's a 6 three-pointer differential, which is huge because for the season, Florida averages 8.8 a game. Auburn averages 8.1. So that's sort of the difference in the game right there. On the boards, now obviously Florida didn't have Micah Handlogden, but it was 40-40 in rebounds. Both Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell had double-digit rebounds for Florida. Now, Janai Broome, 18 points, 11 rebounds, 2 blocks. He's a presence on both ends of the court. But if you watch the game closely, Zach, Florida disrupted the hell out of his offensive game. He was only 7-19. He was frustrated again and again and again. And then one other thing to point out from that game, how do you pronounce Urban's last name?
Klavzar.
Okay, I'll let you say it. Urban had 9 points, 3 of 3 from three-point range. Now, since then, he's only had one game remotely that good, and that was a 10-point outing, I believe, against Oklahoma. In the NCAA tournament, he has not scored. He did not play in the last Florida game, the win over Texas Tech. In his last 4 games played, he's a backup guard, obviously, but he had a big role in that Auburn game. But his last 4 games, Zach, 3 turnovers, 0 points combined. So those 9 points that he scored against Auburn, remember, Florida won by 9. He scored 9. Now he's basically become a non-factor. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Is this a game that maybe Todd Golden and his staff say, hey, let's get this guy back involved? So I'm following a bunch of things here, but Florida's three-point shooting was really the difference in that game. And by the way, Zach, they were not intimidated by the moment. That is a very difficult place to play. They went right in there without Elijah Martin, without Micah Handlogden, and took care of business. And it is, even the people that cover Auburn, you're reading their stories and they're saying, hey, This is a tough matchup for Auburn now. So it's an interesting one. What were your thoughts just from that first game? I mean, you mentioned the free throw shooting, but anything that stick out to you?
I mean, to me, that was when Florida cemented that they were a team that could be a Final Four team. That we could see them right here in San Antonio this weekend. Something also about that game, that was the first game where Walter Clayton was coming back off an injury. So you had that as well, and he made just some huge plays in that game. He hit a couple logo threes, came up clutch. You mentioned Urban. I don't know how much of his minutes and his contributions were able to be had in that first matchup because of Martin being out. I do think that Urban could get a shot to get into this game, but I don't know if he's going to maybe have the impact that he did in that first matchup, because you're going to have Martin in the lineup, who I think could be an X factor in this game. I thought that they probably felt like they were going to get him in that first time against Auburn, because remember, he got hurt against Vanderbilt and then returned to the game and played through the injury. So there was some hope that he would be able to play in that Auburn matchup. And when he got ruled out before the game, they kind of had to readjust and deal with that loss. And, of course, he missed the following game against Mississippi State as well. And that was against his home state team. So talking to him today, he's definitely hungry and glad that he gets another shot at Auburn. But, again, for Florida to be able to pull out that game without him in the lineup, especially kind of right before the game, finding out that he wasn't going to go, as Todd Golden said when I asked him about it, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, that was the first ever win on the road against an AP number one team, and the Gators did it without one of their starters and without one of their bigs. So I think that, like I said at the start of the show, they have some more firepower going into this matchup. I think that they can lean on that experience and the fact that they can gain confidence from having got a win over them. I also don't think that they are, I think in their minds they flush that game and feel like it's a whole new matchup.
Yeah. Well, looking back to that game real quick, just a couple of key stats. Alex Condon countered Broom's stats with 17 points, 10 rebounds, and no blocks, but he altered a lot of shots. Ruben Chinyelu only 4 points and only 3 rebounds. Denzel Aberdeen came off the bench. He started that game for Elijah Martin. Started that game for Elijah Martin, scored 10 points, grabbed 3 rebounds. Will Richard, 12 points. Walter Clayton, 19 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds. So here's another big one. Tommy Howe, 16 points, 9 rebounds. That was kind of his coming out game in some ways this season, where he really just put it up on Auburn and had an outstanding game. And I need to point out Howe also had 3 blocks in that game. For Auburn, the guys that complemented the scoring for Janai Broom were Miles Kelly, the guard. He scored 22 points, hit 3 3-pointers, but was only 3 of 9. Tahad Pettiford, the backup guard, scored 14 points and hit a couple 3-pointers to keep Auburn, to get Auburn sort of back within striking distance. I think they got it to within 5 at one point, and that place was rocking and rolling. Florida calmed down and was able to pull it out, like you said, with some great play at the line. It was some great shooting at the line. It was just an outstanding game by Florida. Not Auburn's best game, but so much of that had to do with Florida. You can't say, Janai Broom just had a bad game. There was a reason why he had a bad game. He had Alex Condon and Tommy Howe and Ruben Chinyelu in his face the whole game, and they created that bad game. Again, he still got his, but the shooting percentage was well below his season average. All right, Zach, it's a big Final Four. We know what's at stake here, but we also know we got to pay more bills, so get to it.
Absolutely. That's right. Want to encourage all fans, Florida fans, to go check out rollback.com with the code Gators20. There's only one way to describe rollback. That's best fit and best feel. For those who aren't familiar, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. They've released several items with their newly licensed game day collection, and it's fantastic. Novel polo designs and clean hoodie and Q-zip designs for some of your favorite schools, including the Florida Gators. Nobody else on the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Roback has been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college stars, past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. Use the code Gators20 on roback.com for generous 20% off all new customers. That's spelled RHOBAC.com. 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with the code Gators20.
You know, and I wore my Roback hoodie over in Scotland. It kept me very warm on the yeah. And I got to tell you, I'm looking at the photo right now, and I wish I could put a piece of tape over my head because I don't look so good, but the shirt looks outstanding, and it really kept me warm over in Scotland, by the way. So, all right, Zach, we can't talk about this game without talking about these two head coaches and what they mean to these programs. I mean, you know, Florida with Todd Golden in the Mike White era was one of promise. He got to an early Elite Eight. You're thinking this guy's a rising star, but could never get Florida over the hump. He leaves for Georgia. And actually, didn't Georgia pay the buyout on that one? Like
that's right.
But and Todd Golden comes in, who really fit the DNA of when you look at what Florida has hired for head basketball coaches from 1961 until now. Most of the guys, Norm Sloan, Part 2, not so much. Don DeVoe, whatever. But most of the guys fit a certain criteria, a certain DNA. Young up-and-comer types. Norm Sloan in the 60s. Tommy Bartlett. John Locke when Florida hired him. He did not have great success in Gainesville, but he was Dean Smith's top assistant at North Carolina when North Carolina was making it to the Final Four in the 60s and 70s. Lon Kruger, young guy from Kansas State. Billy Donovan, 30 years old when he coached his first game at Florida. Todd Golden, another young guy. He has built this program in his own image. He has worked the transfer portal incredibly well. They've developed guys. They found 3-star gems like Tommy Howe, and he's really put together a roster that is, to me, Zach, reminiscent of the 2000 Gators squad, in that they just come at you in waves, okay? You've got everything. You got a little bit of everything. And then you've got Bruce Pearl, okay? There's a guy that is a lightning rod, but, you know, him and Todd Golden love each other. They do. But Bruce Pearl, what he's done at Auburn, this is a program that had some run, Zach, in the 60s, some run in the 80s with Charles Barkley. They made it to the Elite Eight once, but historically not a great program, right? This is Auburn's second Final Four under Bruce Pearl. He has put Auburn basketball on the map. Todd Golden has Florida basketball back on the map. You know Todd, Zach, and you've talked to him about Bruce. There's a real mutual admiration here, is there not?
100%. Yeah, I think that they certainly don't like facing each other, but there is some competitiveness there between him and Steven, who's his best friend, Pearl's son. And obviously they've already faced each other multiple times since Todd got to Florida, but this one's different. And I think for them to kind of get an opportunity to play on this stage, it certainly means a lot to Bruce to see kind of Todd flourish in the way that he has at Florida. He's said all year that he thought Florida was playing like the best team in the country, and he reiterated that this weekend in San Antonio. But there is just a very interesting storyline that you don't really get. Bruce talked this week about kind of his background with Todd, and the fact that Todd was a newlywed when he was there in Auburn, and they had just had their first child, and he was one of the first people to hold his son, and him and his son Steven have continued to be best friends all these years. So that relationship runs deep, and I definitely feel like Todd is always going to feel like he's indebted to Bruce for giving him his first shot at the Power 5 level and being able to see how things operate in the SEC, and also getting the responsibilities that Bruce gave him from a recruiting standpoint initially, and then being able to promote him to a coach. I don't think that Todd would be where he's at today without the time that he spent with Bruce.
All right. It's we got to do some thoughts on the game, obviously. Do you want to give a prediction, Zach? You cool? I mean, I'm
cool with giving a prediction.
We're going to write a little bit more about it Saturday, obviously, but what do you? I'll tell you what, Zach. Let me go first. You're the star of the show, so let me be your warm-up back. I think it's going to be another tight game. I think the ball, whichever way the ball bounces, that team's going to win. I think it's going to be a physical game. I think there's going to be a lot of action underneath the basket. I like Florida's depth underneath the basket. I think the guard play on both teams, there's a lot of guys that can hit threes. Auburn's got over 300 threes this season. Florida has over 300 threes. But I think the difference, a slight difference, is going to be with the bigs. I like Florida 84-81 in a phenomenal game. I can't even believe these teams are playing in the Final Four. They played 174 times, and I saw a lot of bad Auburn-Florida games in person, Zach, back in the day. A lot of terrible games. And it's just phenomenal to see where these two programs, especially Florida, have gone. So my prediction, Florida by 3. What do you got?
Oh, man. Look, it's Final Four, and it's obviously the second time these teams are matched up. So because of the stage and because of how difficult it is to beat a team twice, I do think that the potential is there for this to be a close game. But, man, part of me feels like Florida might just put it on Auburn, Keith. And again, They have not had a game yet. They have not had a game yet where they've just played lights out in the tournament, and I think that that's still in there. They have that, and I think it's going to get showcased this weekend. I just feel like having Elijah Martin back in in the backcourt and having Micah Handlogden coming off the bench against an Auburn team that already doesn't have great depth in its front court, and when Janai Broome gets in foul trouble, they're in trouble. And so for Florida to have another big that they can throw at them, to have Elijah Martin now and him in this Final Four atmosphere, there's just too many things for me to like about Florida in this matchup to not only feel like they're going to win, but I do think that they could put it on Auburn. I don't have a final score, but I definitely think Florida's going to cover. I think they're 2.5-point favorites. I'm taking the over on that. Florida was up by 21 in the jungle. And I don't know if they'll get up by that much on Saturday, but I do think that they're going to win comfortably.
Well, it is going to be one fascinating game. I know you're excited. I'm excited. Auburn fans are excited. Florida fans are ecstatic. It's going to be a good one. Zach's coverage of this game can be found at GatorsOnline.com. He'll be at the game tomorrow in San Antonio, which tips off just after 6 p.m. Eastern time. Do you need to do that ad read before we get
I do. We got one more for him.
Go for it.
We got one more for him, as we do each and every show, with a shout out to our guy Andy from MyPerfectFranchise.net, who has some exciting news this spring with baseball season in full swing. He is a huge baseball fan, and from his line of work, he's seen firsthand the fantastic traits that baseball players bring to the franchise world. Andy is offering a donation of $500 to $1,000 to Florida's baseball NIL collective if anyone from our site at Gators Online purchases a franchise through his company, MyPerfectFranchise.net. He thinks it's a cool opportunity to help Florida's baseball program, and now is a perfect time to contact Andy to learn more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership with franchises. Head to MyPerfectFranchise.net to learn more, or you can text or call Andy anytime at 404-973-9901.
Andy's a great guy, very helpful. Before we go out, before we leave, I'm going to show one thing here, Zach. Let's get it up there. There you go. That's me wearing it. That's me wearing that. You got to get the there you go. There's the Gators.
There you go.
And that is the old course at St. Andrews. Nobody cares about that, though. It's all about Florida Gators basketball right now. So let's see what the guys can pull off. They've already reached, I don't know what to say, legendary status. I think you got to win a national championship right now to maybe be legendary in Florida history. But this is a hell of a run.
At the very least, it's a banner year, Keith. When they're going to hang a banner in the dome for this.
And but if you're this far, you might as well go all the way, right? And Florida in Final Four games is 3-2 with wins over North Carolina in 2000. And then I believe they beat, George Mason in 2006, and then UCLA in 2007. The losses were to UConn and Billy Donovan's last Final Four team, and Duke in Florida's first Final Four season. Grant Hill was the star of that game, and I believe he's going to be calling this game.
Yes.
Fantastic guy, hell of a player. But Florida should have won that game. Florida really should be 4-1 in national semifinal games. So let's see how it goes. Both Zach and I have Florida winning. And if they win, Zach, we'll probably do another one of these preview shows for the final game of the season. For Zach Alberverdi, I'm Keith Niebuhr. This is the Gators Online Show. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend, and enjoy the party.